Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be a palette battle video, and today we're talking all things pastels. Welcome to everybody watching. Thank you so very much for joining me. This video is part of an ongoing series that I like to do on here once a month, where I take 4 eyeshadow palettes with a similar-ish kind of color story, and we compare and contrast them, but we have them battle it out as if it's a boxing match. So we're gonna give points to each one of these palettes, and we're going to determine which one of these is the best, in this case, pastel eyeshadow palette. But before we get into the video, it may be good to know that I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, which greatly skews my makeup preferences. And because I have been buying, trying, and reviewing makeup for more than a decade, I also have some very strong favorites. And if you're into eyeshadow palettes, accessories, and getting the use out of your makeup, this channel may be right up your street. So if you'd like to join the Snow Angel Club, all you need to do is click subscribe down below. So which are the 4 palettes that we're going to be talking about? I have selected 4 pastel palettes today that I have in my collection. I used to have more, but some of those were decluttered. If we're talking pastels, these are the 4 palettes that I have in my collection that come to mind. And it's, of course, the Pastel Pup from Menagerie. In case you don't know what it looks like, that's the one right there. That's going to be in the red corner. And then the Sugarpill Funsize, which sadly has been discontinued, is going to be in the green corner. Then the Creepy Cute is going to be in the yellow corner. This is by Shroud Cosmetics. Mine still says Strobe, but that's because they changed the name since I got this. And then the Huda Beauty Pastel Lilac is going to be featured in the blue corner today. So these are all pastel color stories, and I just want to compare these to see if I hold them up against these 12 different criteria, which one would be the winner, and is the one that I have in mind as being my favorite. Leave a comment down below if you want to guess what my favorite one of these is going to be beforehand. And then, of course, I'm going to give the points. And sometimes these videos turn out to be something different than what my personal preference is actually for. And sometimes it actually lines up and I end up awarding the points in a way that it aligns with my personal preferences as well. But there are a couple of videos in this series where that didn't happen. So let's find out what happens today. I already did the whole thing before sitting down to film this video as a bit of a prep. So let me get started with question number 1, and that is price point. How expensive are these palettes? So the Menagerie Pastel Pup is the most expensive palette here. Its retail price is $40 on their official website. Then the Sugarpill Funsize is the most affordable one. It's only 25 euros when this was still available. And I went off of the price point of the Funsize 2, which you can still get on the Sugarpill official website. This one seems to be discontinued, but we'll get to that in a minute. The yellow corner Strobe retails for around 33 euros. And finally, in the blue corner, the Huda Beauty Little palettes retail for around the 30 euro mark. So for me, right now, the winner is going to be the green corner. The Sugarpill Funsize is the cheapest of these 4, so that's why this one wins. Moving on to round 2, which is availability, and I've already mentioned it. For some of these, you can no longer get it, plus some of these can be a little hard to find. The Menagerie and also the Shroud palettes are both only available on their official websites. You may be able to find them on places like Amazon or eBay, Menagerie, Monolith might stock some of these palettes, like these resale sites, but I tend to go off of the official places where you can buy them. And then the Pastel Pup and the Shroud one are both best bought through their official website, I find. The Menagerie one especially is something that you need to be very careful with, especially if you're an international shopper. Their shipping and handling fees are quite expensive because the palettes are really heavy and they ship by weight. So if you buy just one of their palettes, I feel it's not always worth it. Plus, Menagerie does not ship to the United Kingdom, which, if you're in the United Kingdom, that's been a gripe that a lot of people have been having. But that's because of Brexit, and they don't have either the money or the resources to figure out to get the brand to be available again in the United Kingdom. They are shipping internationally again, save for the United Kingdom, I think. Shroud, I've never had any issues with. They're not super expensive, but of course, because they are a US-based indie brand, you do have to pay for shipping and handling fees if you're in the European Union, making them also a little bit more expensive. And the other two, sadly, both the Sugarpill and the Huda Beauty are no longer available. I'm not able to find them on like a proper retail website. Again, maybe resale websites might still have these, but I do not encourage you buying that. So for me, the yellow corner currently wins because in terms of like getting your hands on it, I think it's the most widely available for everyone because Shroud, I believe, doesn't have any restrictions what they ship, where they ship to. I may be wrong on that. I haven't checked their website, but as far as I know, they ship internationally, and you just pay for the shipping and handling fees wherever you are. So yeah, round number 2, the winner is going to be the yellow corner. But let's talk also about how much product we get. I mentioned the Menagerie being a heavy palette, and that's because this palette has 24 grams of eyeshadow inside of it. So 24 grams in this baby. The Funsize in the yellow corner only has 7.2. 7.2, let that sink in for a minute. It's almost a quarter of what you get in the Menagerie. Then the Creepy Cute has 12 grams of product, and then the Lilac only has 6 grams of product. So this is actually the least of all of them. So actually the winner here, and now you know why it's such a heavy palette, the Menagerie Pastel Pup wins because you get the most amount of product. The red corner gets the point. Round number 4, that is the amount of pans. So inside of the Menagerie, we get 12 pans, which is the only one here today with 12 pans, which means that 24 grams of product means you get 2 grams each in every single pan, which is a lot. The only other brand to really do that is Natasha Denona in her larger palettes, also does 2 grams of product. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. Yes, it's expensive to ship, but we'll get to some of the other benefits of this palette in a minute. This one has 9 pans with just 7 grams of product just over it. It's less than a gram in each eyeshadow that you get in here, which is a bit of a shame, but it is a lovely one. And then we have the yellow corner, the Creepy Cute, having 8 pans, and that one had 12 grams of product. So this has about 1.2 grams, which is a standard eyeshadow size actually, in each one of these pans. And then finally, the Huda Beauty has 9 shades again, and this is again less than a gram of product because we only get just over 6 grams of product inside of it. So that's even less than the Sugarpill. I mean, it looks bigger, right? Like, it looks like this is going to give you more eyeshadow than this. Maybe not. Maybe that's just perception. But yeah, in my brain, it feels like this is going to be more product than this. But that's not the case if you look at how much you get. So again, most pans, most amount of product per pan means that the red corner gets the point. Round number 5 then, the packaging. And that's another reason why this is a heavy palette. Because as far as I know, all Menagerie palettes, at least the ones I have, are magnetized, which means that these have removable pans that you can lift out with a little tool, and you can actually pull this apart and rearrange the color story if you'd like to. It also has a mirror, and then we get the cardboard packaging, which is nice and sleek and slim. So this is very easy to store. I don't love the pup on the front. I don't always love the designs on the front of Menagerie palettes. I'm not in love with it. This seal pup looks like he's very excited to be here. It looks super cute, but I don't necessarily need this guy on my palette. If we're talking cuteness factor, then this would win because look at that little cat. I love him so much. This is very small, travel friendly. Again, the cardboard packaging. We do get a little mirror inside it, the 9 pans. I love how we get the holographic element there. Just adds a bit of pizzazz, just a little bit. So I like that one too. The yellow corner has a cardboard packaging as well. Now I'm not sure if Shroud has removable pans. Now mine is a bit older, and I know that my new Moonfall palette that I bought this year does have removable pans, but I don't think this one does. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you have more information on this than I do, but if you also have the older Shroud palettes, are they magnetic or not? Because I don't remember. That's how long I've had this. But yeah, they are by now. I think they've made all of their palettes magnetic, so if you were to buy this now, you're going to get one with magnetic pens. Don't quote me on this. I think they are. I'm not entirely sure, but mine isn't. It is that sleek cardboard packaging that I love with a mirror inside, which I always think is an added bonus, because whenever I travel, I always forget to bring a mirror, and then I'm like finicking about with like bad lighting in a bathroom, whereas if I have a mirror in the palette, I can just hold it up to the light and I'm fine. This guy is the only plastic one today, so the Huda Beauty is made of plastic. Again, a mirror, non-removable pans, and very difficult to take out as well. I think that if you were to pull these apart, you'd get a lot of breakage. But yeah, for me, just because of how versatile it can be, the Menagerie in the red corner wins. Round number 6 then is the level of pigmentation, and I love Menagerie for how pigmented they are. However, if you've been here before, then you know that I prefer an eyeshadow if it's buildable rather than super pigmented. So while this is super pigmented, I also find the formula to be a bit powdery, and that's definitely going to also work against the favor of this palette in some of the other steps we still have left. But yeah, this is a super pigmented formula, but because of the powderiness, you do have to be really careful with how much you pick up with a brush, because there can be a lot of kick up. In terms of pigmentation, the most underwhelming palette I have to share with you today is the Funsize by Sugarpill. This is the worst in a finger swatch. I mean, my favorite shade in this palette is this periwinkle blue, and if I stick my finger in, like, that's what you get. It doesn't even look periwinkle. It just doesn't. I mean, it's not terrible, and with a brush on your eyes, this works really, really well. That said, I don't think I need to go through this much effort in order to build up the pigment. So while I like this, because I really like the colors in here, I don't think it's necessarily worth it because it is a little bit finicky to work with. Shroud, I should say, creepy cute. This is great pigmentation. It's got a very smooth application. So even though this is very pigmented, there's something going on in this formula that I just love, in terms of it being just a really nice middle ground between good level of pigmentation, yet still very workable. Like, there's no shade in this palette suffers from a lack of blendability because of how pigmented it is. And that's why I really like this one. We still have one left. I enjoy the level of pigmentation we get in the Huda Beauty. However, the shimmers in this are very lackluster and need a lot of building up before they get to where you'd like them to be. So that's why I feel this isn't perfect, and I'm going to give the point to the yellow corner, to the Shroud Creepy Cute. Number 7 is all about the textures and finishes we get in every palette. Now, as if you've maybe seen the rainbow palette I did last month, but there I also said it, there were just a lot of mattes going about, and that's the same in all of these palettes as well. The Pastel Pup, our red corner candidate, only has one shimmer, and everything else is matte. It is a multi-chrome though, so bonus points for that. It is a multi-chrome. Funsize, all matte. Creepy Cute, all matte. And the Huda Beauty has the most shimmers, but it's a little bit not quite there. There's only 4 shimmers in here. We'll get to that in the next question. So we do get a blend in here, but I feel that this one needs to take the winner here, just because even though it only has one shimmer, it's a really cool one that's very special. So that's why the red corner gets the point. So yes, let's talk matte to shimmer ratio. So I already said that I wish that there were perhaps a few more shimmers in the Pastel Pup. I definitely didn't need the black or the white in here. I would have loved to have this palette just be 2 more shimmers. That would have been perfect, because I feel that this shimmer doesn't really go with the rest here. Only 1 shimmer, 2 everything else matte is just not going to be my favorite, because I prefer that 50-50 split. That's just the way it is. I need a shimmer. I just need a shimmer, Sugarpill. Give me a shimmer, please. And then in the yellow corner, here again, Some of these shades don't necessarily go together. Again, something I'll point out again in a bit, but I wish there would have just been a shimmer instead of perhaps like 2 green shades or something. I don't know. So in terms of, you know, matte to shimmer ratio, I think the Huda Beauty needs to get the point here. So a point to the blue corner for the Huda Beauty simply because it has 4 shimmers and 5 mattes. Much better than the other ones. So I think that when I ranked my pastel palettes that I had 2 years ago, this one came out on top. And that's just because if you want rainbow but pastel, this is the only palette I've found that gives it in a really good formula as well. So I've tried other like pastel palettes in the past. I've tried the Beauty Bay one. I used to have a couple more and nothing truly lived up to it for me. I know some people like the BH, what was it? Not the Smitten in Switzerland, the Los Angeles one had some pastels in, but it also had a lot of things to distract from the pastels. My Too Faced Chocolate Bar is a really pretty neutral palette with a pop of pastel, but in my brain that doesn't live as a pastel palette. I'm not sure if that makes sense. This is a pastel palette and you get every pastel you could possibly want. You get like a corally, like warmish tone pink, and then you get a cooler tone pink. You get this periwinkle blue, then you get this really nice green shade, you get a yellow, you get the orange, then you get something that's more like indigo leaning, and then you get something that's more like a sky blue, and you get your minty green. I mean, it just is everything you want, and you have the white and the black to sort of deepen things up and really mix and blend these as well. So it's almost like a bit of an artist's palette, even though I don't love the black and white, as I already mentioned. But yeah, the black and the white in here, even though it gives you lots of options, to me, they are just too stark of a difference with everything else we've got going on, especially the black. I cannot use a black on my skin tone to deepen up these kind of shades. I'm not sure what I would have wanted, but like I mentioned, if these two had been shimmers, I would have liked this a lot better because I have plenty of deepening up shade. Like I have enough like deeper toned oranges and blues that I can pull from other parts of my collection to supplement that palette if need be. That said, if you want your pastels but with a pop of neon, then the Funsize was perfect for that. However, these two, not enough of a contrast. So these two look super similarly once applied to the eyes, so I didn't need both. I just wanted a shimmer instead. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, I know. This has a really good range of colors, but like I already mentioned, it's got like 2 greens and I don't feel I need both. Like if this could have been a shimmer or a pastel yellow, that's what a lot of people have been saying about this palette for years, how it lacks a pastel yellow for it to be like the perfect pastel palette. In terms of range, it just doesn't give you all the pastel shades you might want. I want a shimmer, I want a pastel yellow, and then this would have been perfection, but it's just missing a few of those marks there. And then we have the Huda Beauty one, and this is very neutral toned as far as pastels go. I mean, it's got, of course, some of those purpley tones, but then it's got some peaches in here as well. I don't love purples with peach. However, in this palette, it does work quite well. I did play with this before sitting down to film this video, just so I was reminded of what this palette actually does. And I do think it comes together as one color story. That said, I do feel that I would have liked this, for instance, in combination with perhaps a gray and like a very nice deep purpley plum. I'm missing that. I'm just missing a little bit of contrast. But then it perhaps wouldn't have been a pastel palette anymore. So there's that trade-off as well. But yeah, the purples do work with the peachy tones in here for sure. It's not as much of a contrast as some of the Urban Decay palettes that did purples with peaches like the Ultraviolet. This one does work, but it's a bit... So if you were to ask me, point for color story, goes to Menagerie in the red corner. Round number 10 is going to be blendability. So when it comes to how these blend, what do I prefer? The red corner has, as I mentioned, quite a powdery texture. And while that doesn't have to interfere with the blendability of a shadow in here, I do feel that with this palette, you just need to work a little bit harder to get it there because it tends to also like stick down and then it doesn't want to move sometimes because of how pigmented it is, which is why it's not something you can't overcome. With brushes and taking your time and only doing little bits at a time, you can definitely make it work. But this definitely takes a bit more skill to get the shadow to look nice. This is super blendable because it is sheer, but because it is sheer, I need to build it up a lot to get it to where I want it to be. And then I'm sometimes like, do I want to go through that much trouble to get things to look nice compared to what it looks like in the pan? And I don't always want to. Provided it works better with the brushes than it does on your fingers, for sure. But this is just one of those palettes where I'm like, you know, I think that, yes, you can have a sheer formula, but with just a hair more pigmentation and the same level of blendability, I would have liked this a lot better. I think the easiest formula to work with here is the Creepy Cute one. That said, it goes for all the shades, save for the black. Hear me out. This formula is lovely. It blends easily, it's smooth, it goes on effortlessly. But this black is one of the most intense black shades that I have in my personal makeup collection. I mean, it's intense. Like, I'm just barely touching this, and it's like midnight black, which is stunning. But it does mean that with a shade this dark, you have to be very careful with your placement and where you put it. I mean, I use shades like this as liner. Like, this almost works like a cake liner. That's how intense it is, especially if you were to wet it. Like this with like a bit of a wing. I'm wearing the Moonfall, by the way. I'm just realizing that. I'm wearing the Moonfall from Shroud today. So this is a lovely palette, and I think it's a really, really good formula. Another good blendable formula is the Huda Beauty, but overall, I find that this is just a little bit lackluster in the way it performs, and maybe it's because it's very sheer, or I shouldn't say sheer, but because the shades are quite light, it doesn't build up the way I know a Huda Beauty eyeshadow can build up. So in terms of performance, and I compare it to other Huda Beauty shadows I've tried, this is a bit on the lackluster side, especially in the shimmer department. But yeah, these are nicely blendable. But I do feel it has to be knocked down a point because this just performs so much better compared to how pigmented it is that I'm going to give the point to the yellow corner. And then we need to discuss fallout. Unfortunately, it also has to do with that powdery texture. The Menagerie is a bit more prone to fallout. There, I said it, especially the shimmer. The shimmer can, like, this is flaky. This is, I think that's even what it's called. It's like a flaky shade. And it can travel down your face as you're applying it. The mattes can be a bit powdery and therefore troublesome because if you pack them on too much, they can sort of like also not really stick down very well. So that's why with this, work in very thin layers and it works quite well. This one, no fallout whatsoever. It's too sheer of a formula to make any sort of fallout. This one doesn't necessarily need to lead to fallout upon application. So this one, I feel you can make it work really well, but there is a bit of kick up when you stick a brush in, and especially with that black shade I already mentioned that you have to be quite careful. So I feel that this is one that can work really well provided you use good technique, but if you don't have brushes and for instance you apply shadows a lot with your fingers, this just may not be quite right for you, just saying. I already mentioned how this one doesn't really, like, it has great blendability, but it is a little bit lackluster. This doesn't necessarily have fallout again. However, I do feel it fades a little bit throughout the day. Like, these sparkly shimmers that we get in here tend to, like, some of the sparkliness can like fall out throughout the day, so it's another type of fallout. It's not the kind of fallout upon application, but it's the fallout from wearing it on your eyes all day. Not sure if I'm making sense. So the point here goes to the Sugarpill Funsize in the green corner. Round number 12, last but not least, longevity. So how does this wear throughout the day? I feel that this palette is the best at staying to look like vibrant throughout the day. If you have the technique to make this work and you're careful and you make it work and you use a good primer, this is going to last you all day. I remember I tried this, I think, during the pandemic, and I put the makeup look on in the morning, and then I went to my local grocery stores that afternoon, and I had completely forgotten that I was wearing this really intense, like, pastel blue shade with that shimmer all over the lid. And this lady in front of me, in line in front of me, and I was wearing a face mask, was like, "Oh wow, that's another way I've never ever been able to tell how like face masks can be an advantage, because your eyes truly pop." So that palette I've got some good memories for. This one, the Sugarpill, yes, it's long wearing once you get it on, but this one is a bit funky in the sense that it can start to muddy up a little bit as time goes on. So as the oils of your lids come through, this can start to look a little bit murky after a few hours. It's not necessarily fading, it doesn't disappear, it doesn't crease, it doesn't fall out or anything, but it can just, the shades start to look a little less vibrantly on the eyes. And I feel similarly about this one. Not necessarily that it turns murkier. I love the formula of this. It stays put really well. Like I said with the Sugarpill one, this has no creasing, it stays put with a good primer. It looks lovely, but if you've ever experienced oxidization of a foundation as it like touches your skin and it starts to work with the chemistry of your skin, I feel that this sometimes can make that can happen as well. So if you don't use a good enough primer, I feel that these can look darker after a few hours than when they first went on. So not necessarily like murky or muddy, but just that it's not as of a vibrancy that these shades have when they first go on. So this Huda Beauty one finally has good, like it's got a really good wear time, but there's just something about the formula in this one that if I think of my other Huda Beauty palettes, it just doesn't quite live up to the quality that I'm used to for a Huda Beauty palette. And I can't really point get my finger on it, like what it is that I don't love about this, but I just feel that it's a little bit lackluster. The shimmers kind of fade and it just doesn't look as vibrant anymore. So in terms of longevity, this is not the best that Huda Beauty has to offer. So guess what? The red corner gets the point. Now, if my math after a very long day is still correct, because I'm filming this after I got already home from work, I just quickly took off my makeup and like redid something so I could film for you guys. But yeah, I think the red corner is the winner with 6 points. The green corner has 2 points, the yellow corner has 3, and the blue has 1, which means that the Pastel Pup from Menagerie is the best pastel eyeshadow palette according to my point system, which of course if you awarded points differently, then maybe you've given different points than this one would, of course. That would be your division. We're all just here for a bit of, you know, just a bit of fun and having a laugh, and I just think that yes, this confirms that this is my favorite pastel palette of all time. I thought that going into it. Now that I've given the points, it confirms it for me. If you're looking for a good pastel eyeshadow palette, I would look into this one if it's within your budget. If not, then I think looking into the Creepy Cute is perhaps a little bit better. It's a little bit lower in its price point. They do ship internationally, plus their shipping and handling fees aren't as much as Menagerie because this is such a hefty palette. So that's my little roundup of some pastel eyeshadow palettes. I really hope you enjoyed watching today's video. Thumbs up the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more by me. I make several videos every single week, so if you'd like to stay tuned for more, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye!